All right, we're out here today getting the crankbaits wet, and just got a nice little chop, kind of nice weather, and fishing some shallow rocks. So throwing a little Bagley Sunny B, that's one of my favorite smallmouth crankbaits. Catch some largemouths on it too in cold water. It's sort of flat, but kind of a tight action, but sort of, you know, kind of subtle, smallmouths like that a lot of times. And nice thing about crankbaits is they allow you to just cover so much ground. So you know, a lot of times, you know, I catch a lot more smallmouths over the course of the season on a Ned rig or a tube, or drop, you know, a soft plastics, baits that I can cast to the sweet spot next to the big boulder, you know, those real high percentage places. But a lot of times, you know, if you can put a crankbait like this in your hand, you're able to just cover a lot of ground, and that's how you find a lot of these places. Especially, you know, I'm fishing a lot of new water when we're out on the tournament circuit, places that I'm not familiar with. And so you kind of got to be able to be efficient and cover water. You don't, you know, in a few days of practice and then a tournament, you don't really have the, you know, luxury to just go throw a wacky worm or something slow around that, you know. When I'm at home, a lot of times I know where the juice spots are, the sweet spots, and you can kind of, there we go. You can kind of, we got a walleye. You can kind of just pull up to them and cast to the sweet stuff. But walleyes really like crankbaits too, and this guy's lucky because that's about as good of an eater as you can get, kind of right there. We're gonna let this one go, but woo. All right. But yeah, that's kind of the other fun thing about crankbait fishing, especially up north, is you're gonna catch some walleyes, you're gonna catch some pike, caught big muskies on little crankbaits like this too. Everything kind of eats them. So comes to choosing colors, predominantly, when I'm fishing shallow, I like to throw the brown crayfish kind of imitating colors. This is called green crawfish, and it's kind of cool because it's sort of perchy looking as well as crayfish looking. It's got a little bit of green pumpkin, a little bit of orange. So, you know, it's moving fast. They're not getting to inspect it that much. It's just got the right profile for both a little perch, a little crayfish, and it's in that right color hue. So. But sometimes the shad patterns are better. It's just all about playing around on whatever body of water that you're fishing. But for the most part, you know, when you catch these smallmouths in you know, generally shallow water, it's mostly all crayfish that they're spitting up, and that just shows you what they're eating. Getting to the rod, I mean, that's a real crucial element to crankbait fishing as well. You want something soft, something limber, if you're gonna get serious about it and do it right. And a couple reasons. Number one is you wanna be able to fight the fish, put some pressure on them, but that soft rod's gonna allow you to give you that shock absorption so you're not tearing hooks out of the fish's mouth when you're fighting them. There's, you know, treble hook baits, smaller hooks, even though there's more points, it's harder to land a big bass on treble hooks than it is on a single jig hook or a worm hook or something. So that long rod's gonna give you some shock absorption there. It also allows you to cast some of these light baits a long way. This particular one, this is my favorite. It's a G Loomis IMX Pro, a 903. So it's a 7.6, pretty light rod. And this particular one, if you're gonna get one, this is kind of my favorite all-purpose cranking rod, where I can throw these smaller baits like this, but I can also throw, you know, a medium to deeper diving bait like the Bagley B2 or a DT14, a 5XD, that kind of bait that you're gonna get in that 12 to 16 foot range. This rod's great for that as well. So it's kind of a versatile, you know, do-all crankbait rod. I like throwing fluorocarbon. It just works the best with crankbaits. I love braid for a lot of stuff, but for crankbait fishing, fluoro's kind of the way to go, I think. It's tough too when you're bouncing it around the rocks. Generally, Right now I'm throwing 12. That's what I use for the most part. But sometimes if you're throwing a square bill up in shallow cover, you can beef it up if you're a little dirtier water. But generally, if you want, you know, your baits to get down deep, then you want to use a little bit lighter line. Sometimes we'll even go to 10, but usually 12. You got some durability there, bouncing it off the rocks a little bit and that sort of thing. But comes to picking locations out here, you know, this is some new water I'm fishing, and so just hitting some points and little reefs and humps, just, you know, likely looking smallmouth cover, so or structure. A lot of these, you know, big vast sort of areas in that 6 to 10 foot range, and just looking for rocks, you know, on the screen. We got some here, and as I'm fishing along, I mean, I got this 360 going all the time, and it's a big part of my, you know, the way that I like to fish. I can see where all the rock veins are, and it just gives you get a real good ballpark of where you know, you got a higher percentage of getting bit when you cast your bait out there. One thing about crankbait fishing too, you know, just about everything you read and when you hear people talk about fishing with them, it's all about making contact with the bottom, and that's what triggers strikes. And a lot of the time it does, especially with largemouths, I think. A lot of times with smallmouths, and I've had this conversation with some of my, you know, my travel partners that I room with and stuff out on tour, Seth Fider, Chris and Corey Johnston, Chris Groh. I mean, we've all sort of talked about it and have seen it at places like Lake St. Clair, where you actually, sometimes for smallmouths, you want your crankbait to be up above the bottom a little bit, not necessarily making contact with the bottom. You know, say if you're fishing 14 feet of water, your bait's in 10, or like we're doing today, you know, fishing a lot of like 8 to 10. This bait goes, you know, 6 to 8 foot. So you're staying a little bit above the bottom. I'm hitting it every once in a while, and that's all good. But I think a lot of places, you know, outside of the Great Lakes where they're really goby oriented and looking at the bottom, a lot of times smallmouths like to look up to feed. And so if, you know, just something to keep in mind to try. Sometimes grinding on the bottom's the deal, but other times, especially, you know, in clear water where they can see good, sometimes keeping using a crankbait that's going to be up above the bottom a little bit is the way to go. There we go. Cranking. What do we got this time? Had pike and small bass, walleyes. Nice. That's a nice smallie. Oh, you just hammered it too. Woohoo! These are the ones you gotta watch, but look at that. Ate it good. When they get, you like when they get both hooks in their mouth for sure. It's pliers on this one. I talked about the rod earlier. As far as the reels go, I actually pretty much running all Shimano reels, and that's a Bantam, Shimano Bantam right there. That's my favorite crankbait reel. They're just really solid. I mean, you can feel everything that your bait's doing. I use a 7-to-1 reel for the most part on all my rods, just to have some level of continuity. And nice bass. And you know, I mix them up. If I'm using the deep cranks, I like that fast reel. And then with some of these smaller baits that you're reeling them a little bit slower, maybe in shallower water, I just sort of reel my reel slower, and you adjust to it. They're all the same, so you just get used to it. But man, shallow water cranking, super easy, great way to find fish, make contact with fish, and catch some big ones as well.